There's there's a lot that I want to say. It's just very unjust that we have to suffer based on someone else's actions. This is our home and it's disappearing and nothing's been even spoken about it. Back here we're actually racing with time, not only tides, but we're chasing time as well.
Welcome to Auki. I'm from Milton. Thank you. Let me go now.
I'm Millie Barty. I'm from the Solomon Islands, half Makira and half Malaita. Currently we're in my village of Lilisiana in Malaita. This abandoned area here is actually where my uncle used to live. And he started moving towards inland as the seas were getting higher.
In the 1980s, when I was a kid, this house was in there. The old one right up there. And this, like we are standing in the beach is there. Last time while you were a kid, you should remember, no more?
Yeah.
You see the road where all the vehicles are following come this one. How road them come before now? Come ocean. Go ocean now. You go see. Or you look at a million out of tree, this tree up here. Road not ocean. And the grave on top go. You can keep on the grave down here. One grave here, and some other graves are already in the sea now. Yeah? So the road is in the sea now.
Just to, come back here and realize that, they don't smile as much anymore as when I was a child. A lot of aunties I see are struggling. For me, that's all part of that change, and it's not a nice feeling to come back to that. Growing up, it never used to be this crowded. So what's happening is a lot of people from Lilisiana are moving in. So before it was just my family, my uncle's family just down here. There was a lot of space, like greenery. So for me, it's just too crowded. I mean, this is the first time I'm seeing it really crowded. Yeah. As you can see from Lilisiana, they're all moving towards what's left. So the village is actually getting narrower, but our population's getting bigger. And due to sea level rise, the land strips that we live on is getting smaller.
Climate change leads to sea level rise for two reasons. The main manifestation of climate change is temperature rise. And when you heat water, then it expands. So as the upper levels of the ocean have been heated for the last 50, 60 years and more, so they've expanded. So the sea level, the sea surface has risen as a result. The second reason is because of ice that's sitting on the land When the temperature rises, the ice sheets that are sitting on the land tend to melt, and the water from those melting ice sheets then goes into the ocean and causes the level of the ocean to rise.
So Intala ready for come inside what used to be the old church, yeah?
Yeah, until come inside now. I'm now door now here, yeah. Door long old church. I'm now until come inside now. Yeah.
Sina bara come in everything, yeah?
See now you look him come and you don't look him any cement left. Only 2-3 stones where I got strong and I got still hold it, yeah. Yeah. So this old church, I'm lo middle long place now, yeah. Before come.
So before middle of village.
Yes, this old church before I'm lo middle long place, the village now. Can see some post there where I got a stop around him church.
In the Solomons, we've seen dramatic changes to their shorelines. We've seen islands that previously supported people's livelihoods, people's fishing. We've seen those islands completely wiped off the map as a result of these rapid, substantial rates of sea level rise. So from an environmental perspective, that's certainly the most dramatic impact on people and their existence. The particular sorts of impacts relate to the physical stability of their land. So houses have physically been washed into the ocean. But some of the longer term changes are also related to drinking water. So shallow groundwater sources are becoming increasingly salty.
Because most islands depend on hand-dug wells for their water, either for drinking or washing. And because of the sea level rise, this water is gradually turning into salt.
Kumara, wild taro, banana, popo, something for make them house, live for motu, low here now, low before. This time, no man now climate change here. Now make them place here, me feel sorry now, okay. No good. Me ya silip low house. House blomina lo here ya. But see come no mami silipi. See come no mami just wake up climate change na ya.
Once salt water gets into the freshwater lens, it affects the roots of the root crops. If you can't grow crops, you have to move out from the coastal areas. But if it's on a low-lying coral island, you have nowhere else to move except to relocate.
%80 of the Solomon Islands population live in the rural areas, and because Solomon Islands is made up of more than 900 islands, most people are living out in the small islands and in the coastal areas. It's a challenge at the moment, especially with the increasing population and with the land available for relocating of communities. People will have to be evacuated sooner than later, and the issue here is where they will be moved to.
The issue here for many coastal communities in the Pacific is that if they don't own higher ground traditionally, then they would have to go to higher ground and lease. And of course, these are people who are often barely within the cash economy. They don't have money. So how they would pay a lease, rent for land that they don't own, but to which they move, is a really acute problem.
So when the government has been investigating options for possible relocation of these people, they're very cautious about the possible social conflicts that might arise from moving one cultural group onto another culture's land.
Because of the history of disputes over land disputes that have been happening in the country, resulting in the recent ethnic tension, they don't want to live amongst a people who 20, 30 years down the line will chase them off the lands again. They would like to settle in one place where they can continue to speak their language, learn their traditional cultural practices, do their traditional dances, and practice their cultural traditions and beliefs. That should help them maintain their cultural identity long into the future.
So relocation is obviously an incredibly emotional and sensitive issue. It's not the first objective. These are people with a deep association and connection to their land and islands that have lived there for multiple generations. And they've become forced to relocate because their physical existence has been undermined by sea level rise. These are places where the shoreline has physically been washed away, so that houses and the foundations of those family homes that have been in place for multiple generations have physically been washed into the ocean by waves. Interestingly, cities around the world, coastal cities, of which the largest global cities are on the coast, are also really on the forefront of these changes over the next 100 years. And the problem is the climate system is very complex, and once it's broken, it takes time for it to mend itself. So with air temperature, we estimate that there's about a 20 to 30 year lag time. That is from when we fix the problem to when we start to see the benefits. Unfortunately, with sea level rise, the lag time is much longer. We're looking at 100 and 150 years of committed sea level rise, where even if carbon is switched off tomorrow magically, we have this 100 to 150 year commitment. So it's no longer a case of if, it's really a matter of when and the magnitude of this sea level rise. And that's what we're learning a lot about in the Solomons, is how these high magnitudes of sea level rise can impact both shorelines and, importantly, people.
But I'm not happy now, in the sense that I'll stay low while in the money. Because all these changes, yeah. I'll stay low while in the money. Another thing we looking at changes look people is that the adoptions of education this time, where people were guru come or get taken into the right understanding to learn, and they are making people go west to the school. Like adoptions of Crasso, adoptions of marijuana and all that. So I'm also I'm my family are vulnerable to it.
There are other aspects of climate change. Maybe the most significant for people in the Pacific is the change in the incidence of tropical cyclones. So tropical cyclones are affected by temperature changes. Temperature rise makes the ocean warmer, so tropical cyclones can develop across a larger area. And we've seen tropical cyclones that are way above average in terms of their size and in terms of their intensity.
Time we were a small cyclone, I'm not too much in this time. If I come inside 1 year, but before no more. Sometimes I got 4 or 5 years, but I know in cyclone. This time no, same 1 year a cyclone. Sometimes people come inside, stuck at us.
These monster storms are going to reach much further into the eastern Pacific and also further north and further south. So, cities like Auckland in New Zealand, I mean, they have narrowly escaped over the last 20 or 30 years tropical cyclones that have been heading their way. And unfortunately, I think we can expect more of that. The the projections of the influence of climate change on tropical cyclones in the future, they involve fewer tropical cyclones, but of the ones that occur, the average strength of those is going to be greater than it has been.
You know, after 61 years, any particular area, home where you were looking and you feel sorry to masnada?
Yeah. Now, I'm no graveyard.
Graveyard, yeah?
Graveyard, yeah, now I'm far too much now. Where places Los Angeles here, where I'm used to be road before, yeah? Where you have to go around on road, the truck road, yeah? This time, road and go wipe them out, go. Some fella graves go down to Los Angeles.
Any graves? Anyone you sabe, the grave?
Yeah.
In Los
Okata graves blomi lo there too, okata those two lo graves blocked inside Los Angeles.
Last time, or the graveyard on top, yeah. The road now come back also this way. You go this way. The road where the trucks are using the vehicle. When you go the road there, when you look up also. This one grave on top gonna like the other grave on top there. This one is on top gonna. The grave of my grandfather, this one. And I'm now destroyed now.
Walking through the graveyard was really difficult for me, just because, you know, as a child, that's where you understand, that's where my great-grandfathers lie to rest. And it's always been like a sacred, special place. Just to realize that that's all gone, for me, it's just tragic. Like, I don't think there's one specific word to describe how I feel. It's like a bowl of emotion, you know. I'm angry, I'm sad, confused sometimes. Yeah, just because to me, just realizing that we're not only losing our home, but we're losing, you know, our history, our culture, our traditions, you know, and yeah, for me, the most sad aspect of it is a lot of things have been compromised, but you know, usually a compromise, both people have to be happy with it, but these people are forced to compromise, you know, because what else can you do? They're not contributing towards the impacts to their home, but yet they have to compromise their livelihoods. The value of our traditions, you know, depleting, and yeah, we're losing the very land that, you know, that makes us us.
What we're looking at here is that this is a first world country, it's not causing problem. Yeah? But causing problem that him affecting the third world countries. So in this sense, I'm good that the first world country have to reduce this kind. Yeah? Make him travel look how now the climate will have change after this. Or otherwise, if not continue, then the third world, yeah, you will not by first people to go off now, yeah? Or to die, to suffer and die.
The big challenge is scale. This is a global problem. The estimations are for a significant proportion of the globe's population to be threatened by sea level rise over the coming centuries. So this is an issue that is not going away, that we need to address. And these these isolated small communities in the Pacific are really on the front line. These are the first people globally to experience this and go through a relocation. So understanding the lessons they've gone through, the hardships they've gone through, and scaling that globally to try and support other communities is critically important. Some of the higher end projections of sea level rise are going to be extremely challenging for large coastal cities around the world that underpin our society. There's obviously relocation of large cities is, it's a question that people aren't even really considering yet. We can be very certain that these rates we're seeing in the Pacific now will eventuate globally within the next century. So it now becomes a question of taking some really strong action to try and limit those impacts.
It's just very unjust that we have to suffer based on someone else's actions. And of course, our governments, everyone, we need to be more resilient in the face of climate change. But my message is, just be more mindful that your actions are affecting other people. And, back here, we're actually racing with time, not only tides, but we're chasing time as well.